Hey everybody, it's Santina Doyle here from Solo Female Van Life Lessons. Welcome back to another video. The last two videos you may have watched were all about car camping in extreme heat. We went on a trip that was supposed to be in above 90 degrees Fahrenheit weather, and it actually did get into those extreme temperatures, but I was a lot more comfortable than I thought I was going to be. And in those videos, and if you haven't seen them, go back, and if you're interested, go back and watch those two previous videos about how to pack differently for extreme heat. In those videos, I listed a bunch of things that I was taking. I had never camped in 90-degree heat before, and so I wasn't sure what I would need and what would work. And so I promised that I would come back with another video and let you know what I used, what I didn't use, what worked, what didn't work, so that you could decide for yourself if you're going to camp in extreme heat, what you might bring. So I have a list here of the things that I did bring, did use, didn't bring, and I'll just go through them. They're not in any particular order. But on our trip, it did get up into the low 90s, but to tell you the truth, we stayed at the side of a lake in an area that was covered with trees, and there was a breeze, and so even at the most extreme level of heat, it was so incredibly comfortable. The breeze made it feel like it was just in the mid 80s to me, and I was in my little overalls that you'll see in those two videos, and also a little, I don't know what to call it, a little string top, and I was extremely comfortable. The only time I was a little too warm was when we went back to the campsite. It was in a state forest. You did have to reserve the spot, but it was a free campsite, and there was not as much of a breeze, and that was on top of a mountain, which is kind of interesting. So down in the valley where there was a lake, it was extremely comfortable and breezy, and up on the mountaintop, it was pretty still, and so it was a little warm. But it was closer to dinner by the time that I went up to the mountaintop and to the campground, and so I only had to wait a little while before it started cooling off. And so speaking of cooling off, I did happen to take one pair of sweatpants and one, a very light hoodie. And I needed those. I actually got to the point later in the evening where I was chilly, and we did have a campfire. We weren't allowed to have a wood campfire, so someone brought a propane camp stove, like a propane campfire, and someone else happened to bring the liquid propane, so it worked out beautifully. So both nights we did have the campfire and sat around it, and I was chilled to the point where I had to pull my camp chair up to the campfire and stay warm. So I did wind up needing long sleeves and long pants, and I would recommend, even if you're going to go into extreme heat, that you bring at least one of each of those so you have the option. Now, what I didn't bring bedroom slippers, but I did bring a pair of light socks for sleeping. I did not need those at all. I didn't use them. I had bare feet. We did try the rose water. I passed it around, and everyone did have a chance to spray their face, the ladies anyway, and it did feel really nice, and it smelled really good too. So I think I'll keep that in my DOP kit from now on. And then I thought I was going to be living in my flip-flops, but to tell you the truth, I don't have my summer feet yet, so I'm not used to having that thong between my toes, and my flip-flops didn't feel all that comfortable. I wound up just walking around in a pair of mule sneakers for most of the time. I wasn't even planning on bringing. I just happened to have them on when I was prepared to get into the car, and I was like, oh, I don't feel like digging for my shoes and changing them, so I'm just going to drive in these. Plus, I don't like to drive in flip-flops anyway. So I wore my mules most of the time, and then we did go hiking, and I did wear my hiking boots with the thinner socks, and it worked just fine. So I do recommend that you do bring a variety of thicknesses of socks, just one or two pair, just so you have them. Even if you don't use them, they don't take up much room, and a variety of shoes as well. I do recall on one trip, this was a while ago, we did have torrential rains, and most people were in sneakers and got their feet soaking wet. And if they hadn't had a second pair of shoes, they would have had to suffer through having wet shoes on for the rest of the day. So I think it's very important to at least have one change of socks and shoes. Now I did use my orange hat because we did find out that where we were was allowing archery, or hunting with bow and arrow. And so it was very important, in my opinion, that I had something orange on. I don't think we were around any hunters. I didn't see any hunters, but I always feel safer if I'm wearing something orange during hunting season. And I use that baseball cap for an extra sunshade anyway. My glasses, which have the transition so they get dark in the sunlight, are not quite as dark as regular sunglasses, and so it's nice to have that extra shade. Now I did use my shorts, but surprisingly, I did not use the sheet that I brought with me. I was chilly enough that I actually crawled into my sleeping bag at the end of the night in a little string tank top and my shorts, but I did actually sleep in my sleeping bag, and I was perfectly comfortable with my car closed up. I think it was 74 at night. I think it went down a little bit. It was a little chillier than we anticipated, but to tell you the truth, I was perfectly comfortable in my shorts and my tank top under my sleeping bag. Now everyone is different, and you're going to have to try to figure out what will work for you, how you're going to be comfortable. But what I would say is bring a range, right? So anticipate either sleeping in the sleeping bag and or on top of the sleeping bag, and think about what you might need. I did not have to use my yoga mat at all. I did not sleep on top of my sleeping bag, so I don't know if sleeping on that nylon or on the camp pad, the plastic camp pad, would be uncomfortable in heat. And I think I'll just have to wait until the next hot time, which might be this weekend, to try that out. But I did use the technique that I showed in those videos of putting my comforter underneath my camp mat to level out my Honda CR-V, because it does go flat in the back and then up at an angle where you put the seat down. And so that really worked great. I felt like I was sleeping so much more level than I have in the past. So I might use that even in the winter time. Now, I did wear my overalls, which you'll see them in the previous video. And I told you I did wear my hiking boots and the lighter sock. We did hike both days, and we hiked early so that it was in the cool of the morning. We were on the AT, the Appalachian Trail, and we were in shade for the whole hike. So right beside a beautiful stream. It was absolutely gorgeous. There was breeze. It wasn't just still. And so it was, I'm really glad that I brought all my hiking stuff so that I could experience that. I'm glad I didn't go with my first thought, which was, oh, it'll be too hot to hike, so I won't be hiking. I did hike. So I think the saying that I mentioned in the last video or 2 videos ago, bring what you think you need, make do with what you have, and then buy what you need later, really held true for this trip. I didn't have, there's a bug flying around me. I didn't have to go out and purchase anything because I had brought everything that I needed. I did use my list, which I highly recommend you create a list for yourself of everything that you need to bring on every trip. And so I had everything that I wanted and everything that I needed, and then some. There are things that I brought that I didn't use, but I had them if I did feel like I needed them. So bring what you think you need, make do with what you have, and then buy what you need later. So after the camping trip, if you say, I really could have used X, go out and get it for the next trip. You can obviously go while you're on the camping trip and buy what you think you need, but honestly, I just rather make do. That way I'm not wasting my time at a store and traveling to a store. I'm just really in the experience. Now, I did use my water, of course. I didn't go through as much as I thought, and because we didn't have a wood campfire, I didn't need to put any out. So I probably used 2 or 3 gallons of water this trip. I didn't need to use the rest for putting out campfires. But while I was driving, I thought this was interesting. I had the windows down, and it must have dehydrated me more than usual because I actually drank my 1.5 liters while I was driving. I've never done that before, but I drained my Camel while I was driving. But by the time I finished the last mouthful of water, it was when I was arriving at the campground, and so it was the perfect amount for driving that distance. But I will always have my Camel in front of me, or my bladder, whatever you want to call it, in front of my car on the passenger seat where I can access it while I drive. Now, one of the things that I do bring is information about other campgrounds and state forests and places that we have been and we want to go, but we didn't look at it this time, so I might stop bringing that. It's a big, thick binder of brochures, and I might not bring that anymore. If someone wants to know something, I can let them know later. But I always bring a book, and I did use it. I don't fall asleep usually after the campfire. I don't crawl into the back of my car and fall right asleep. I like to read a little bit. It helps put me to sleep. So I did read my book. I always bring a book, and I use my Lucy light to read from that light rather than a headlamp. I think it's a more soft diffused light, and I don't have car window coverings, and so I don't want to be obnoxious using my headlamp and perhaps shining it directly at someone else's vehicle. So that worked out really nicely. I did use my camp chair around the campfire, and I did use that portable cushion that I brought this time for the first time. I brought that cushion for the first time this last camp trip, and it was very comfortable to have on my camp chair. Since we didn't have wood, I didn't need to use my tarp, and it didn't rain like it was supposed to, so I didn't need to use my tarp for a rain covering, which was good. And for the most part, as I said, I sat under trees near a lake where it was breezy and lovely for most of the 2 days. Sometimes I had friends with me, sometimes I was alone. And there was swimming allowed in the lake, and we did go in. I went in both days and waded in. It was very, very cold. It's an old mine, and so it's 90 something deep, 90 yards deep, and got very, very cold the further out you went. So that was actually perfect for this trip, as hot as it was. And then that car screen for the screen for the window that Sabrina gave me, I actually didn't use, and I was surprised. I slept with my car closed up. I did not need to open the windows or put the screen in, and I was not too hot. So that might just be me, guys. I'm pretty comfortable in hotter temperatures, but I was very surprised by that. I thought that it would be too warm to car camp in 90-degree temperatures, but the 90-degree temperatures were during the day. It did cool down to about 74 at night, and I was perfectly fine in my closed-up car. So I just wanted to do this video to get back to you as to what I did take, what I didn't take, what did work, what didn't work, what I used, what I wound up not using, so that you can decide for yourself, if you're going camping in extreme heat, what you may need. And I hope you join us on Meetup. We are Solo Female Van Life Adventures. We meet Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time virtually every other week. And then as we get to know each other on those virtual calls, then we plan to camp together in person if you're on the East Coast. And you can also join our co-ed group, which is East Coast Camping, and we meet Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Right now, that's weekly. That might change to every other week as we begin doing more things together in person. But again, please come and join the virtual calls first for a couple of times at least before you decide to come camping with us in person. That's for all of our safeties, yours as well as ours. It's so that we get to know each other a little bit, make sure we're a fit before we go camping in person. But we do hope that you do join us on either of those groups, either of those virtual calls, or both, if you're female. And so for now, I will just say happy camping, and we'll see you next time. Bye.